Hello there and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is L24 Midnight News, and coming up next in our news program. The Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel has arrived to Algerian capital Algiers tonight, where he was received and greeted by the Algerian Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman alongside the Foreign Minister Mr. Ramtan Al-Amamra. Fears of war spillover between Russia and NATO bloc ease after NATO says missiles on Poland was Ukrainian stray. The G20 summit wrapped up today with a joint statement condemning the Russian military operation in Ukraine and addressing issues as diverse as good and energy security and climate change. In Africa, Sudan's Forces of Freedom and Change Coalition is seeking to sign a framework agreement with the military as first step to ending the political deadlock. Hello and welcome again. First, starting from Algeria, the Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel has arrived to Algerian capital Algiers tonight, where he was received and greeted by the Algerian Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman alongside the Foreign Minister Mr. Ramtan Al-Amamra and members of the Algerian government at Houari Boumediene International Airport. Miguel Diaz-Canel in Algiers for a working and friendly visit. President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, received on Wednesday in Algiers the President of the High-Level Commission on Security and Development in the Sahel region, former President of the Republic of Niger, Mohamedou Issoufou. The meeting was attended by Ramtan Al-Amamra, Foreign Affairs Minister, and Abdelaziz Khalaf, the Presidency Office Director.
I have just been received by the President of the Republic. Our meeting focused mainly on the mission I was entrusted with by the UN Secretary-General concerning the African Union, ECOWAS and the G5 Sahel. This is a mission to assess the security and development situation for all the countries of the Sahel in its geographical dimension, which includes Mauritania, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger and Chad, but also neighboring countries threatened by terrorist groups and banditry.
Mohamedou Issoufou also underlined the axial geopolitical role of Algeria. Let's hear it.
Algeria is an axial country in the region. It is for this reason that I have come to ask the President Abdelmajid Tebboune to support me in this mission with which I have been entrusted. I thank the President for his advice in carrying out this mission.
In the same line of thought, Mohamedou Issoufou was also received by Energy and Mines Minister Mohamed Arqab. Both discussed the security and development mission entrusted by the Secretary General of Nations in relation to the African Union, ECOWAS, and the G-Sahel. On this occasion, the Energy and Mines Minister gave a general overview of the energy and mining policy in Algeria, as well as the prospects for the development of the sector through the major structuring projects in progress in the upstream oil and gas, mining and renewable energies, namely the Trans-Saharan Gas Pipeline Project, Kafra project in Niger, as well as Sonatrach Naftal and Sonal Gas projects in Mali and Mauritania. To a different matter now, Ukrainian Defense Minister said on Wednesday that Kiev was working with international allies on integrated and echelon air defense system. Defense Minister gave no further detail in a tweet written a day after Russia carried out strikes across Ukraine, but he said that protecting the Ukraine sky would be a priority at planned meeting with the allies in Germany. Secretary of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council said that Ukraine wanted a joint study on Tuesday incidents with its partners. He added that Kiev expected its allies to provide the information that provided the basis for their conclusions that the incidents may have been caused by Ukraine's air defenses. However, the Polish president said that on Wednesday that both Poland and the United States would have to agree on Ukraine taking part in the investigation into a missile that landed in a village in southern Poland.
It is now a common proceeding conducted by Polish and American experts, and if anyone was to be allowed to take part in these proceedings, it would need at least the agreement of both parties, and we can only consider it that way.
NATO's Secretary General said on Wednesday that the blast in Poland was likely caused by Ukrainian air defense missile. The missile landed on a Polish grains facility, killing two, initially raised global alarm that Ukraine conflict could spill into neighboring countries. Nabil Khazin.
For a moment, the world caught its breath as this missile falling on Poland could have been not only a turning point on the course of the conflict, but also could have changed the world, as it is considered a direct confrontation between Russia and NATO, something both sides have been trying to avoid. But a message from NATO Secretary General eased the tension after he said the missile was not Russian.
We have no indication that this was the result of a deliberate attack. And we have no indication that Russia is preparing offensive military actions against NATO.
On the site of the blast, police launched an investigation, and residents of the village fear the war on their doorstep could spill across the border at any time.
Who wouldn't be afraid? Everyone is afraid because we are the closest. This is the corner closest to the border.
I think NATO will defend us with all the assurance there is no way Russia will come here.
An attack on one NATO country could trigger a collective response. G7 and NATO leaders called for an emergency meeting 10,000 kilometers away there in Bali, where the US president remained skeptical over claims that Russia was behind the attack.
It's unlikely in the minds of the trajectory that it was fired from Russia, but we'll see.
Faced with this new crisis, the Kremlin immediately reacted and denied all accusations that its forces have launched a missile on a NATO territory.
Russia has nothing to do with the incident in Poland. We became eyewitness of a hysterical Russophobic reaction that is not based on any real data. In fact, high representatives of different countries made baseless statements about what happened, what became a reason, and so on.
Russia's statement is being supported from a NATO member. The Turkish president said the situation needs to be investigated.
I have to respect the statements made by Russia. It is important for us that Russia says they have nothing to do with this incident.
The incident is the first time that the territory of a NATO country has been struck during the near 9-month conflict in Ukraine.
And on this matter, previously we have asked Mr. Gregory Simons, who is an associate professor and researcher at Institute for Russian and Eurasian Studies from Sweden, and who was located in Poland yesterday. We asked him whether it is confirmed or still unclear that Russia was responsible for the Polish blast, and he has this to say.
The issue was, if Russia was to attack, why would they attack a village, Polish village of no significance, on the border with Ukraine? It doesn't make sense. And if they did put a rocket in, there'd be a lot more damage and casualties as a result. And what I considered most likely is that this was probably the remnants of an S-300, one of these surface-to-air missiles, which the Ukrainians shot at the Russian missiles to intercept them and bring them down. Now, Biden has said this is what has happened. Poland has also agreed that this is what happened. Initially, if we remember, there was the excuse when not much was known that these were fragments of a Russian missile. Well, S-300 is made by both Ukraine and Russia. So, I mean, both countries use it, but this would not be the case that it's a Russian missile. And now this is what has been said. I mean, Stoltenberg, the chief of NATO, has said it. I mean, numerous ones have now said that this are the remnants of a Ukrainian rocket that was likely trying to intercept Russian rockets.
Also, Mr. Simons clarifies the ongoing concerns of major escalation between Russia and NATO countries after these strikes.
This is what was attempted by Zelensky. I mean, this was a clear and deliberate attempt to drag NATO into the Ukrainian war. I mean, this is already, if we understand, a proxy war between the United States and Russia. I mean, NATO are supplying weapons, they're supplying finances, they are supplying all kinds of supplies, including manpower, to fight Russia in Ukraine. So this would be a further escalation, of course. But, I mean, if we look at what's happened today, cooler heads have prevailed because, I mean, if you start a larger war, a direct one between NATO and Russia, what is going to be the result? It's not going to be a good one, potentially, because you are declaring war on a nuclear power. And this is extremely risky if you're doing this officially. I mean, this is very risky now, and there's no guarantee that there will not be further escalation. But obviously, it's understood that this is just not worth it to risk a wider war at this point.
The Kremlin and Cuba's ambassador to Russia said on Wednesday that the president of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, is set to meet the Russian President Vladimir Putin next week in Moscow. The visit, described by the Kremlin spokesman as a very important. The G20 summit wrapped up today in Bali, and leaders issued a common declaration at the end of the summit, tackling the current challenges, including economic difficulties, food security, and climate change. Mariam Zian.
Leaders of the world's group of 20 wealthiest nations concluded a two-day summit under the theme Recover Together, Recover Stronger on the Indonesian island of Bali.
We met in Bali at a time of unparalleled multidimensional crises. We have experienced the devastation brought by COVID-19 pandemic and other challenges, including climate change, which has caused economic downturn, increased poverty, slowed global recovery, and hindered the achievement of sustainable development goals.
Although food security, global economy, and climate change were on the agenda of the summit, geopolitics successfully made its way to dominate the talks at the irritation of the Indonesian host. Leaders huddled to discuss their response to news that a Russian-made missile had landed in Poland, killing 2 people near the country's border with Ukraine. As for the outcomes of the 2 days meeting, G20 economies agreed in their declaration to pace interest rate rises carefully to avoid spillovers and warned of increased volatility in currency moves. They promised to take coordinated action to address food security and challenges and stressed the importance of ensuring that global energy demand is matched by affordable energy supplies. They also reaffirmed their steadfast commitments to tackle climate change by strengthening the full and effective implementation of the Paris Agreement and its temperature goal.
And as I said in the COP27, there is no way in which we can address the climate challenge that we face without the cooperation of all G20 members, and in particular, without the cooperation of the 2 biggest economies.
The meeting was also marked by Xi Jinping's emergence from a 3-year pandemic isolation. The Chinese leader has embarked on a whirlwind of face-to-face meetings with Western leaders as he looks to reassert China's global influence.
As leaders of the 2 major countries, we need to chart the right course for the China-US relationship. We need to find the right direction for the bilateral relationship going forward and elevate the relationship.
As the leaders of our 2 nations, we share responsibility, in my view, to show that China and the United States can manage our differences, prevent competition from becoming anything ever near conflict, and to find ways to work together on urgent global issues that require our mutual cooperation.
The G20 presidency will move to New Delhi as confirmed the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the close-in session of the summit.
And from Indonesia to USA, former US President Donald Trump announced Wednesday that he will compete for the submission of the Republican Party in the presidential elections scheduled for November 5th, 2024. Hussein Burkan on what's follow.
Donald Trump is back in the presidential race. The 76-year-old former president of the United States announced in a speech from his country club in Mar-a-Lago the presentation of his candidacy, barely an hour after it was made public that he had completed the bureaucratic procedure for it.
But we always have known that this was not the end. It was only the beginning of our fight to rescue the American dream. In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
Supporters of former U.S. President Donald Trump gathered in a bridge near his residence in Mar-a-Lago, Florida, to celebrate the announcement of his candidacy for the 2024 presidential election.
I feel wonderful. I feel hopeful. I feel now we have a real president. He'll be the leader of the free world. Bad right now. Our country's so bad that yes, it will be easy if the Democrats don't steal the votes like they did last time.
Donald Trump's decision to mount a bid to regain the White House in 2024 drew mixed reactions from New Yorkers walking outside the Trump Tower on Wednesday.
I think he's a smart man. However, I just don't believe in what he stands for, personally. So, but I mean, it really just depends. I don't think he really, I see that he has America's best interests. However, I don't think he sees the people's best interest, if that makes any sense.
Trump announced his candidacy from the ballroom of his mansion in Florida, the same one the FBI agent entered in August in search of top-secret official documents that Trump took from the White House, sending a political message to his rivals. Trump faces his third candidacy with a series of legal cases, which could deprive him of most of his business empire and even lead to him being indicted for stealing secret White House documents. If Trump managed to win the 2024 election, he will be the first president to return to the White House after losing re-election since Grover Cleveland went handed 30 years ago.
Canada has imposed fresh sanctions on Iran, targeting individuals involved in alleged human rights abuses and companies it accused of supplying Russia with drones for use in Ukraine. It is the fifth package of sanctions Canada has implemented against Iran this year. It targets 6 individuals and 2 entities: Shahada Aviation Industries and Quds Aviation Industries. Nuclear watchdog Chief Rafael Grossi called in Iran on Wednesday on the sideline of the IAEA General Terminal or Terminal meeting in Vienna to start to deliver information on its nuclear program, saying that Tehran had to go by the rules. There is currently an impasse between the IAEA and Tehran over uranium traces found at undeclared sites.
Maybe it's lost in translation or lost in tweeting, but we hope, as I said, we hope that this of course is a technical meeting. It's not a high-level meeting. It's a meeting that was supposed to continue the conversations we were having. So, yeah, there is some doubt. I hope they will clarify.
The Zionist occupation forces arrested 7 Palestinians during a pre-dawn raid in Al-Khalil, south of West Bank. 6 Palestinians were detained after Jewish forces stormed their houses in Al-Khalil city, while another was rounded up in Sharif town. According to the Palestinian Information Center, the occupation troops often carry out detention raids against Palestinians in the West Bank and Al-Quds, claiming to arrest wanted Palestinians. It is worth noting that more than 4,700 Palestinian prisoners are currently held in Zionist jails, including 30 women, 190 minors, and about 800 administrative detainees. Kuwait executed 7 people convicted of murder and other crimes on Wednesday for the first time since 2017. The first 7 people were executed at the Gulf Arab State Central Prison, according to a statement posted on Twitter by the public prosecution. It said that murder warranted the strongest punishment of execution, which also acts as a deterrent to others. Coming back to the African continent, the Sudanese Freedom and Change Coalition Forces said Wednesday that it is seeking to reach a framework agreement with the army as a first step to end the political impasse in which Sudan has been stalling since October 2021. The statement said that the coalition seeks to reach an agreement with the army and political forces to address the most important issues, including the disunderstanding, which is a constitutional framework for establishing a transitional democratic civil authority that completes the task on the Samba revolution.
We will move towards sustainability, demographic civil power, and the settlement of democracy in the country, as well as the building of all institutions at the head of the armed forces, and resolve all clashes between us as Sudanese. In order to reach a beneficial situation for all people, we must open a new phase, a phase based on justice, transparency, and accountability, and to build state institutions that do not belong to the party, but to the Sudanese people.
As thousands of supporters attend the launch of presidential campaign in the city of Jos, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, presidential candidate for Nigeria's ruling Congress of Progressives, promised hopes to country's youth. 3 months before the presidential election on February 25, 2023, the Electoral Commission fears that attacks will intensify. The Commission says it has recorded around 50 election-related attacks in the first month of the election campaign alone.
To you, the youth, we made a promise that today may be difficult, but hope is not lost. We won't let you down. Nigeria will be well, and our hope will renew again. Today, we are renewing that hope.
UK inflation jumped to a 41-year high of 11.1% in October, exceeding expectation as food transport and energy prices continue to squeeze households and businesses. The Office for National Statistics said inflation was now at its highest level since October 1981, having recorded a rate of 10.1% in September. The figures come a day before Treasury Chief Jeremy Hunt is scheduled to unveil a new budget amid growing calls for high wages, increased benefits, and more spending on health and education as rising inflation erodes the spending power of people across the country. NASA's next generation rocket ship was on course Wednesday for a crewless voyage around the moon and back launched from Florida on its debut flight, held 50 years after the final launch mission of the Apollo era. The much delayed launch kicked off Apollo's successor program, Artemis, aimed at returning astronauts to the lunar surface this decade and establishing a sustainable base there as a stepping stone to future human exploration of Mars.
Today we got to witness the world's most powerful rocket take the Earth by its edges and shake the wicked out of it, and it was quite a sight. It's quite a sight. We're going to learn a lot more as we go. We've got 4 weeks of mission to go. We are just barely starting to scratch the surface of the Artemis program and gather data. We've learned a few things along the way, mostly that this system is performing exactly as we intended it to. We've had a few funnies along the way. We had some dropouts in the flight instrumentation on the SLS rocket. We've had some funnies in some in the star trackers, and then we had some funnies in some micro switches on the solar array wings. But the systems are performing, and we are pressing outbound toward the moon.
The Algerian national team tied up with the southern neighbor in Mali 1-1 tonight in an international friendly game. The Algerian national team advanced through Riyad Mahrez from a penalty kick in the additional 3 minutes of the first half. Mahrez hit the ball hard to the left of the Mali goalkeeper. On the other side, the Malian teams managed to equalize through Mamadou Fofana in the 58th minutes. It's worth mentioning that this game comes within the framework of two teams' preparations for the remaining 2023 African Cup of Nations qualifiers after failing to qualify for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, which will kick off next Sunday. To this end, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us in this midnight news bulletin. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform as well as Al24 official website. For now, good night.